The Stop Killing Game movement has been picking up steam in recent days since they hit their initial 1 million signature milestone, and they've actually gained more signatures since then. Now, just kind of a TLDR for people who don't know what's going on. Basically, the Stop Killing Games movement is geared at going after game studios who are creating live games that require constant support from the developer, because once the developers pull their support for the game, then people who bought those games are no longer allowed to play even if they want to. They're basically arguing, this is the people behind Stop Killing Games are arguing, that something should be done to prevent these game developers from pulling support, or at least relinquishing support over to someone else who will maintain it, so that when you buy a game, it's not going to have what they refer to as planned obsolescence on the part of the game itself. Now, this type of movement is something I can get behind. Anything that's pro-consumer, I'm supportive of, especially when it comes to something like this, because I think it is pretty bad that game developers will create something, then all of a sudden they just decide, no, we don't want this anymore, so we're going to stop it, and something that you previously bought yourself, you can no longer consume. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I like a lot of older retro games, because as long as I have a console and as long as I have a copy of the game, I'm allowed to play it. That's not the case when it comes to a lot of these online games that require constant support, because if the game developer wants to tell you that you can't have it anymore, then they're basically the ones that makes the call, and you're no longer owning the property that you previously bought. You're essentially just renting this. So when it came to the signatures gathered for this is being done in the European Union. And when they get 1 million signatures, that means it triggers a European Commission, and that they have to hear out the argument for Stop Killing Games. And once this happened, a lot of the game developers were kind of getting worried about it. This is something I talked about in a video, I believe it was last week. But now they're starting to get more support from bigger sources on this one. I saw this post right here from Pirate Nation. So the Vice President of EU Parliament just came out in support of Stop Killing Games. So he has a screen grab right here. This is from that individual's story on Instagram. I stand with people who started this citizen initiative. I signed and will continue to help them. A game once sold belongs to the customer, not the company. So on the surface, that sounds like it's a pretty big deal, because a lot of the people that need to back this within the European Commission in order for something to be done for these game developers are now starting to back this. So that should be a positive sign for more people who want to push the Stop Killing Game initiative. However, I'm kind of skeptical that this is actually the path that the people who are, or at least the consumers who want to help protect and preserve games really want to go down, but I will get more on that in a moment. First, let's look at what the game lobby is saying about this. And I'm not necessarily on the side of the game lobby either. In fact, I would actually say that they're the bad guys, but you have to look at this as there's separate competing parties with their own interests. There's the consumer party that entails all the gamers, and a lot of these people I would say are the ones supporting Stop Killing Games. Then there's the game developers that are producing a product that gamers supposedly want, but at the same time they're kind of holding it away from them, kind of like a carrot and a stick sort of manner, where they can pull support for it at any time. And then you have the European Commission, which is supposed to be a governing body that's making something for everyone else, but they have their own interests in mind too. And even if some of them are backing the Stop Killing Games initiative, I don't think they're necessarily an ally that you want to align yourself with, and I'll get more on that in a moment. So lobbying group says Stop Killing Games petition would make games prohibitively expensive to create, and it really just depends on what they're talking about, making games prohibitively expensive to create. I mean, if you just make a non-supported game or something like that, or just single player games or other things of that matter, then I don't think it's prohibitively supportive. I think if something like this actually went into play where they have to support games or relinquish support of a game if they want to, after they sold it or whatever, then, which is, I think, the whole point of the Stop Killing Games, or a big portion of it, is that once you sell it to the public, then the public now owns it, and you can't just all of a sudden pull support for that game. You have to give the control over to someone else if you're no longer going to support it yourself. I think a lot of those games will kind of go away, or at least we would see significantly fewer of them in the future if a law was created that says that they have to do that, which some people might be for that, other ones might not be so much. Stop Killing Games, a consumer movement, started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. has been picking up steam recently. It recently hit 1 million signed in its European Citizens Initiative petition, the minimum amount it needed for the European Commission to officially respond to it. Now, the EU Lobbying Association Video Games Europe has offered its own statement arguing against the Stop Killing Games movement. And obviously, they're going to be arguing against it because this is a group that's their whole job is to support game developers, not necessarily the gamers themselves. So they're going to make out their statements why this is a bad thing. This basically they're putting out their arguments in front of the public as well as the European Commission. Will that work or not? It remains to be seen, because just because the petition got enough signatures in order for the EU to hear out the argument for it, it doesn't necessarily mean anything will actually be done. All it means is they have to listen to the argument, and if they deem it to be important enough, then they can actually move on to do something about it. And what they do about it, we don't know. But the fact that there's people within the EU government actually stepping in to offer their support for it suggests that they're more leaning on the side of something's going to get done with it, which is something that a lot of these game developers are worried about. Private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as their protections we put in place to secure players' data and remove illegal content and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail development choices by making these video games prohibitively expensive to create. We welcome the opportunity to discuss our position with policymakers and those who have led the European Citizens Initiative in the coming months. So the fact that they're actually willing to negotiate, even if it's just kind of they're just saying that, I think is a positive step. And I'm hoping that this is ultimately where it gets to, because when it comes to this whole issue, just introducing a third party like the EU, I don't think is a desirable outcome. I think there's more harm than good that can ultimately come from that. Some people are saying these game developers are so big, the only way that can actually combat them and get them to not have anti-consumer practices are to get the government involved. But I think if you do that, it kind of opens up a can of worms, and it creates an outcome that I think no side would like, because like I said, there's three sides to this matter. You have the game developers, you have the consumer, and then you have the European Union. And if just kind of going back to this post, you can see the person who actually supported this, or this EU official who's in support of this, Niku Stefaniatu. I think that's how you pronounce it. I looked up the person right here, and this is who it is who's backing the Stop Killing Games initiative, and just kind of doing a cursory look over what his political stances are. Is a progressive Romanian politician, political positions, joined the other Romanian MEPs in co-signing a letter to these people in which they call on the European Commission to stop the United Kingdom from holding EU nationals and immigration removed. So they're against deporting illegals or people who don't belong to a nation. Strong supporter of Palestine, pro-Palestinian rally, supportive of or big into LGBTQIA plus community and their advocates. So this is someone that is, in addition to all this, is also for curtailing free speech and other things like that. And you get people like this supporting the initiative to stop killing games, which is basically you have people like this supporting an initiative that would ultimately result in the government imposing more control over the video game industry. And maybe it's just me, but I'm kind of weary to trust people like this with having my best interests in mind, because I think a lot of gamers who are signing the Stop Killing Games petition have the right idea. And if you actually support that, I do encourage you to sign that and to voice your opinion on this matter. But I think the best solution to all this is not necessarily getting the EU involved. I think the threat of that could be enough to, like we saw from the article, bringing these game developers to the negotiating table. Because one thing that we saw with the gaming industry in the past, once government threatened to actually get involved with the gaming industry with the rating system and other things like that, the gaming industry decided to regulate themselves. So instead of having a governing body telling them what they can and cannot do, They decided, okay, we're going to create our own rating system so we can determine if a game is appropriate for kids or not. And that was enough to stave off the government. I'm thinking something similar is needed for this, because if we can get it to the point where game developers can actually work with the consumer and basically leave out a third party that has no business in this argument whatsoever, then it's possible that we could reach an agreement that satisfies both parties in this matter without having to employ more government. Would ultimately be more government overreach, dictating what game studios can and cannot do. Because when you get a lot of people within the EU whose sole purpose is to try to restrict the rights of the individual, saying like, yeah, we're going to back you, consumer, against these evil corporations, I think what's ultimately going to happen is more restrictions on what game developers can do and more restrictions on what the consumer can buy. And it'll just be something that works out to the benefit of neither of them, but it'll work to benefit basically the EU and the politicians, whose sole purpose is basically just try to gain more control over the individual. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you want to know more about this, you can check out my video I did about it last week. A little bit more of a background on what's going on with the Stop Killing Games initiative. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.